After travelling only a few hundred metres from his home, the driver of the Mazda RX-7 apparently turned out of Kirkdale Drive onto Charlestown Road and into the path of a southbound semi-trailer. The heavy bull bar of the semi crushed the driver's side of the sports coupe, sending the wrecked car spinning into a third vehicle. The 25-year-old driver of the Mazda was trapped for about 20 minutes. As ambulance rescue officers worked to free him, paramedics stabilised his condition. Suffering a broken leg, broken thigh and internal injuries, he was taken to the John Hunter Hospital in a serious condition. Police cleared some of the traffic snarl by diverting traffic along nearby suburban streets.
It's estimated that about $1.5 billion worth of work has been let to major contractors for the frigate project, and they in turn are subcontracting, especially for equipment packages and components. But according to Amacon executives, there's been very little input from Hunter firms. Amacon hosted a confidential meeting at the Newcastle Technology Centre today to give local companies an insight into the best opportunities to win work. Private talks continued on a one-to-one basis between Amacon executives and local firms, but again no one was available for comment, according to the Technology Centre, which barred the media from the conference. However, Newcastle Chamber of Commerce spokesman Graham Jeffries said local businesses found the talks encouraging.
I think there's ample opportunity there by Hunter businesses to tap into this and to gain quite a bit out of it, not only in the areas that we've been well known for, but in some of the areas of electronics and industries.
With the last frigate not due for delivery until 2005, it's expected that Hunter businesses will at least have plenty of time to compete for some share of the project.
The New South Wales Electricity Commission will change its name to Pacific Power as part of its attempt to become a corporate enterprise. With the name change, there will be a change in the running of the organisation. Elcom's 6 power stations will operate as 3 separate companies in competition with each other. Eraring, Vales Point and Munmora will form one company. Bayswater and Liddell will make up another, and the Wallerawang Power Station will form the third. The 3 groups will compete against one another to sell electricity to the state grid pool.
What we are now providing is a new environment for people to think competitively, to embrace a new culture of competition and commercialisation, a new name in a corporatised structure.
The government hopes its new initiatives will generate a spark of competition in the electricity industry and consequently reduce the cost of the average power bill.
We are hoping to have at least a 5% reduction in real terms at the end of the 2-year period that we identified as the trial period.
Meanwhile, a spokesperson for the Electricity Commission has confirmed it is close to finalising the sale of the Liddell colliery. The announcement is the latest electric shock for mine workers who have mounted a legal challenge against the sale of Elcom mines. There is concern that one man's cost saving is another man's job loss. The United Mine Workers Federation today remained tight-lipped. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
State government budgetary constraints have suddenly turned the costs of running preschools into a vicious merry-go-round.
We don't want to see it move into a rich people's only activity.
Until last year, the government contributed about a third of the cost of keeping a child in preschool. But with a funding freeze and an increase in demand for daycare, there's now a shortage of money. Special needs subsidies for economically disadvantaged or disabled children have also been pegged, but at the same time, preschools are expected to enrol more of such cases. The buck stops with full fee-paying parents.
The parents have to supply more percentage of the daily rate themselves, plus help subsidise the disadvantaged and economically disadvantaged children at the centre, which means more of our disposable income per week has to be spent on the childcare, which leaves less for other things.
The Country Children's Services Association, responsible for more than 80 registered preschools in the Hunter, claims that if the funding is not increased, fees will continue to rise and services decline.
Could affect the people of the middle income type people that are struggling with one or two parents working to be able to meet the basic requirements of mortgage and preschool. And if the funds are not reassessed, then those people will have to have increase in their fees, which will be detrimental to the children's education.
Prime Minister Bob Hawke arrived in Newcastle last night to be greeted by local members Alan and Peter Morris. In the auditorium of Western Suburbs Leagues Club, Mr Hawke received an even warmer reception from 300 of the party faithful. In his introductory speech, member for Shortland Peter Morris touched on the resilience of the region, which continues to be a strong Labor foothold despite disappointments.
The people of the Hunter are renowned for their resiliency, for their ability to overcome adversity, for our readiness to embrace change.
Seemingly in reply to this, the Prime Minister hinted at a major capital investment project for the region.
I would suggest that you should watch with interest the budget, because you will probably see some further reference to things which... the budget's on the 20th, mate, the 20th of August. The 20th of August. And you may see something there which will be of particular interest to you.
On the economical side of things, Mr Hawke believes the economy is moving out of the recession.
The signs are there now that the recovery is starting, and it will grow.
Three current Austral players have been signed. Former youth international Ralph Mayer, who is enjoying a fine season in the State League. Bobby Newmov has received the nod, and he will bring former National League experience with him. And Andy Roberts from the Youth League, who has made the transition to State League well. But the big coup today is the signing of Andrew Koska, a former Australian youth and fully fledged international and captain of St George for the past 5 seasons. One of the premier players in the NSL, it's now a whole new ball game for him.
I just felt, it's a new lease of life for me. I've been with the same club for 14 years prior to this year, and I wanted to join a club that's got something to do, and I'm looking forward to try and be part of that when it comes about this year.
Also signed Sydney Olympics John Kosh, who was a youth international and AIS member, Queensland State player Darren Hillier, and he will join State teammate Nick Meredith, who joined Australs this year and is wrapped in getting another chance in the NSL.
It's been okay. It's dropped off the last couple of weeks. Been a bit disappointed in the last couple of weeks, so I've got to try and pick that up again. But I'm enjoying it down here. Settled in really well, my fiancée and I. So yeah, we're enjoying it.
But there's still a long way to go, with 3 overseas players being eagerly sought, along with a host of other local players.
We've got to be patient. People have got to be patient with me, and I've got to be patient with the players, because if I'm going to look for the quality that I am looking for, other clubs are going to be interested in the same players, so I've got to make sure that in the end those players are wanting to come to Newcastle. They're the right players as far as I'm concerned, under the right terms.
This weekend Austral play a double-header against Southern Districts at home tomorrow and in Sydney on Sunday.
The superpowers may be signing treaties to cut back nuclear weapons stocks, but that didn't stop the Newcastle Peace Forum from taking to the streets today to protest the dark side of the atomic age. Tuesday marks the 46th anniversary of the atomic bombing of Hiroshima and the birth of a world that lives with the nuclear threat. But with the Cold War all but thawed out, the call to rally against nuclear arms met a cool response this year. Only about 100 marched from Pacific Park to City Hall.
We think there are still too many nuclear arms in the world, and until the last one's been destroyed, we believe that people shouldn't relax their vigilance.
Health workers opposed to the closure of Wallsend Hospital took their cause today to where Newcastle's fighting spirit is at its fieriest, a Knights Rugby League match. While petitions were being collected at the footy, members of the Defence of Curry Hospital Committee were meeting to discuss grim news. Their hospital's next.
The information is confidential at this stage, but we believe we're next on the list, and we can't sit back and allow it to happen. We must be proactive.
A spokesman for the Minister for Health Services Management, Ron Phillips, denies there's any plans to close Curry Hospital. He says there'll be no further changes to the Hunters Health Services until the newly appointed administrator, Dr Timothy Smythe, has completed a strategy in about 4 months. But it's the administrator and the health cuts he could implement that concerns the Curry Hospital Committee.
Under the Hunter Area Health Service and under Owen James, they understood our community. But you bring someone in from Sydney who doesn't understand, he is there to cut costs. He's not worried about community feeling.
A combined union meeting protesting Hunter health cuts is planned for tomorrow. The Secretary of the Newcastle Trades Hall Council, Peter Barrick, says industrial action could flow from the meeting. But the Curry Committee will propose that Wallsend Hospital workers should not strike, but demonstrate their commitment by working for a day without pay. Other proposals include a call to the Hunters clergy to hold a vigil outside Wallsend Hospital, to convene a meeting of state politicians, and for the public to keep up a cry of outrage.
And I'm appealing to not only for the people of the community of the whole Hunter area, get behind us, because this is one of the saddest and one of the worst tragedies that ever in my 77 years that I've been here, I'm shocked, never think this would happen.
Every 4 hours, an Australian woman dies of breast cancer. It claims the lives of more women aged between 30 and 65 than any other disease. The Mater Hospital in Newcastle will take part in the first international trials of the drug tamoxifen, which doctors hope will prevent breast cancer.
The drug is one of the most important agents that we have to treat breast cancer. The trial is potentially the most important study that's probably been conducted for any cancer.
Women who have a higher risk of developing breast cancer, particularly those with a family history of the disease, will be considered to take part in the trial. Tamoxifen was used as a fertility drug in the 70s and has few side effects. Early diagnosis of breast cancer has been possible through the use of mammograms. In terms of treatment, Professor Forbes says doctors should be more aware that there are safe alternatives to a mastectomy, the removal of the breast.
Mastectomy as a treatment should be progressively relegated to history already for most women. It has a small place. But women don't need a mastectomy in 1991 to be cured of their breast cancer.
Hopefully, tamoxifen will prevent the disease. The trial of the drug will commence early next year, and subject to funding, the study will be conducted at a national level. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
The study will cost around $250,000 and will be the most detailed ever undertaken into electrification of the Hunter line. It's yet to be decided who will undertake the study, which will examine the technical aspects of electrification, plus the wider community benefits, including associated contracts for local industries.
Clearly a project of the order of $300 to $400 million will generate a lot of revenue for the Hunter region, and of course that's good for the community as a whole. Initial figures seem to suggest that there could be as many as 1,000 new jobs.
During the past 12 years, many studies have been undertaken by State Rail into electrification of the line without any real conclusions ever being reached. So the question must be asked, why will this study be any different?
Well, this study will really determine the shape of the rail infrastructure in the Hunter Valley for the next 20 or 30 years. It's absolutely vital for a competitive coal industry that we have the right sort of rail infrastructure.
According to Mr Hughes, electrification is so important that even our overseas customers are calling for it.
In a visit I made to Japan in January of this year, major Japanese consumers of coal queried whether or not New South Wales should be proceeding with electrification of the railways.
The major advantage of electrification has always been the increasing cost of importing diesel fuel when we could be using hunter coal and local power generation, a contract which could be worth around $12 million a year to Elcom. But overshadowing this is the outlay cost of electrifying the line and buying new locomotives, around $400 million, which the state government says it can't afford. The study, which will be completed by early next year, will decide who should bear that cost, the government, the coal industry, or a combination of both. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
The placenta and umbilical cord keep the baby alive for 9 months while it's in the mother's uterus. Research indicates that some problem pregnancies may be linked to abnormal blood flow through the placenta. Doctors have discovered that in some cases where the mother has high blood pressure, there can be an abnormally low blood flow to the child. This can lead to growth retardation in the baby, and in extreme cases, it may die.
And they end up with problems of even intrauterine death if in fact they're so starved inside the uterus that all the nutrition and oxygen requirements are just not being met.
Doctors can monitor the growth of the unborn baby through ultrasound. A recent refinement of the Doppler ultrasound allows doctors to study the velocity of blood flow through vessels in the placenta. They're trying to discover a drug which will return the blood flow to normal.
If we've got adequate treatment for the problem, we'll be able to prevent the delivery of very small growth-restricted babies and stop some of the load on our neonatal intensive care units and also the subsequent problems that these children have after delivery.
Preliminary results indicate that they will be able to find better drugs to treat the condition. There is also an indication that low doses of aspirin may be beneficial. The results of the Newcastle study should be available at the end of the year. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
The project would operate under the federal government's Skillshare program. Unemployed people would be given work sorting garbage from recyclable material as it's brought to the tip.
Well, they're learning management skills is one thing they're learning, but they're also involved in that particular recycling effort. They're able to understand what is recyclable, what's not recyclable. Normally they would be paid by the stuff that's collected. It will be sold and there will be a profit from it.
With the life of Redhead garbage dump almost over, Council is looking seriously for an answer to its garbage woes.
It takes the volume out of the waste that's going into the tip now, and that reduction in waste volume will certainly be of benefit to the council, both financially and in the life of the tip.
Council will approach Newcastle and Maitland to join the venture and possibly establish a regional recycling facility run by Skillshare students.
We could have it set up between both Newcastle and Lake Macquarie as a regional recycling facility, but recycling a different type of material, possibly building material and other recyclables which might come in on trucks rather than on the cars that are entering the tip at the moment up there.
The Lord Mayor John McNaughton called a special council meeting this evening to address the crisis in the Hunter Area Health Service. He wants the Wallsend Hospital to remain open and he's called on the public not to give up the fight yet.
I want them to write to the Minister and write to the Premier saying that we will not brook any interference with Wallsend Hospital or any other of our hospitals. We wish them to remain open and proper hospitals as they stand at present.
The Lord Mayor equates the decision to close the hospital with the loss of the submarine and frigate projects.
It's a devastating decision of the government, made in a most arrogant and conceited way, and we're fearful that if they're allowed to get away with this, it'll be the first of many, and we'll see that every budgetary problem they have is attacked in the Hunter.
Meanwhile, Tim Smythe is the doctor who's been called in to deal with this emergency. One of his first tasks was to rearrange the furniture in the former Chief Executive's office. Now he's turning his mind to rearranging the health services in the Hunter.
In terms of reorganising services, is obviously the immediate thing is the relocation of services from Wallsend Hospital, and I've set up a team reporting to me yesterday to undertake that task, and I'll be meeting with them each day to ensure that that process remains on track.
Tomorrow, the Health Department will tell Dr Smythe what the Hunter region's budget will be for this financial year. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
The horses weren't the only ones racing at Cessnock. 7 hardy stayers lined up for the Melbourne Cup of meat pie munching, a 15-minute torture test of the taste buds. Top weight and pre-race favourite Gary Harley was a late scratching, but as always, his call was a classic. They say you can never get too much of a good thing, but in this case, they were wrong. The flyweight jockeys could only look on in awe as 17-year-old John Wilson pushed the boundaries of good taste by devouring 10 pies and taking the title. The other competitors were left looking green, and it wasn't with envy.
School dancers, choir and drama groups have been taking centre stage at local shopping centres, delighting passers-by with colourful performances. Charlestown South Public School began with square dancing and ended with modern dance. The Warners Bay Public School Band also had toes tapping. Performances in schools and shopping centres will continue tomorrow.